All right, today we're basically becoming archaeological detectives. We're going to travel back almost 4,000 years to piece together the lost world of Bronze Age Britain. And we're working from just a handful of clues, starting with one really mysterious object that pretty much rewrites the entire story we thought we knew.
So get your head around this question. It sounds like a riddle, right? But this is the puzzle presented by this one artifact, the Caergwrle Bowl. A single object that challenges, well, everything we assume about this period. It suggests a world that was incredibly rich with symbolism, belief, and just amazing technical skill. This bowl, it's our first and most important clue.
So, let's start our investigation with the bowl itself. It was found completely by chance back in 1823 in northeast Wales, and it is so much more than just a pretty piece of treasure. Think of it like a message in a bottle from this incredibly distant past. And if we can figure out how to read it, it gives us this priceless window into the minds of our ancestors.
Okay, to really get the bowl, we first need to understand this idea, a votive object. See, the fact that the bowl was found in a field that used to flood all the time, that was no accident. It was put there, in the water, on purpose, as part of some kind of spiritual ritual. This tells us they had this deep connection between spirits, maybe healing, and water. This wasn't just tossed away, it was a serious offering.
When you look closely, the bowl's design is like a map of their beliefs. Most archaeologists think it's meant to be a boat. You can actually see the details. You've got these little shields made of inlaid gold foil, symbolic oars, and these carefully carved waves it's sailing on. It even has these carved eyes, oculi they're called, which were probably there to ward off evil. So this wasn't just any boat. It was likely a sacred vessel, maybe even one they imagined was carrying a god on some kind of spiritual journey.
And the way they made it is just remarkable. This wasn't crudely hammered out in a shed somewhere. When you analyze it, you can see that these Bronze Age craftspeople used specialized tools, things called dies, to perfectly stamp these patterns onto the gold foil. It just shows an incredible level of skill and a really deep understanding of how to work with metal.
So, we've seen what one single object can tell us, which is a lot. But how do you get from a bowl to the entire society that created it? Well, for that, we have to turn to our next set of clues, their burials. You know, how these people treated their dead reveals so much about what they believed, their social structure, and even their connections to the wider world.
Now check this out. We've got two burials from the same area, around the same time, but they tell completely different stories. Over here, we've got Brimbo Man. He was buried with this really well-made pot, a beaker. This links him to what's called the beaker cultural package, a whole new tradition that was spreading across Europe. It brought new ideas, especially the shift to burying people individually, which suggests a bigger focus on who you were as a person rather than the old group identity. And then, on the right, you had the burial at Mold. Inside was an absolutely astonishing cape made of pure gold. This thing just screams immense wealth, power, and status.
Now, it's really tempting to look at that gold cape and just think, oh, this must have been a king or a high priest, but hang on. This question makes you think a little deeper. I mean, what if the crown jewels were buried with the queen? It wouldn't just be a lavish funeral. It would signal something monumental, like the end of a dynasty, a massive shift in society, maybe even a rejection of everything those jewels stood for. It would mean something really, really big was happening.
And that gets us to this crucial point. It's the living who bury the dead. And they do it for their own reasons. So burying the mold cape might have been less about celebrating the person who died, and more about the community needing to take these powerful, maybe even dangerous objects and ideas out of circulation. It was a conscious choice made by the living to hit the reset button after a death.
Okay, so we've got sophisticated beliefs, we've got complex social rituals, but this brings up a really practical question. All these amazing gold and bronze things, where did the metal actually come from? I mean, to have a Bronze Age, you need bronze. And to make bronze, you need a pretty serious supply chain.
And it's a huge logistical problem. Bronze isn't a metal you just dig out of the ground, it's an alloy. You need copper, which was around, but you also have to add about 10% tin to make it strong and useful. And tin? Well, tin was much, much rarer. Finding both of these metals and then bringing them together, that required this incredible network of mining, production, and trade.
And right here, this is the smoking gun. Off the coast of Salcombe in Devon, archaeologists found the scattered cargo of what was almost certainly a Bronze Age shipwreck. And just look at these numbers, 280 copper ingots, 40 tin ingots, plus finished bronze tools and even some gold ornaments. This wasn't some local trader in a small boat, this was a major shipment of raw materials.
This find is a really, really big deal. It dates right to the heart of the Bronze Age, and it proves that these raw materials were being moved by sea on an almost industrial scale. It's direct physical proof of a complex, long-distance trade network that connected Britain with Europe and probably even further. This network was the engine that powered the whole Bronze Age, creating wealth and helping a powerful elite to rise.
And the crazy thing is, we can zoom in even further. By analyzing the metal itself, scientists can learn about its purity and the technology they were using to smelt and refine it. This is a microscopic view of a tin ingot from that shipwreck. You can actually see its internal structure, including these tiny particles of other metals. It's like a metallurgical fingerprint that tells us about their tech, and it might even, one day, help us trace that tin all the way back to the exact mine it came from.
So, let's step back for a second and look at all the clues we've gathered. We've got a ritual bowl that points to this rich spiritual life. We have complex burials that hint at status and huge cultural shifts. And we've got a shipwreck that reveals a massive international supply chain. When you start to put all these threads together, you can begin to see the outline of this incredible lost world.
You know, this quote from Neil McGregor just hits the nail on the head. The gold of the Mold Cape is beautiful, sure, but on its own, it's just treasure. It's the story of it being buried in a stone-lined grave, under a mound, with all the other objects found nearby. That's what turns it into history. The context, it's everything.
But we've got to be realistic here. Our picture is always going to have missing pieces. The Mold Cape, for instance, was found by workmen who accidentally destroyed a lot of the site. And the damp British climate means most organic stuff, wood, leather, cloth, it's all just rotted away. And sometimes even carefully excavated sites don't get fully published for years. So we're building this entire world from just a few precious clues that managed to survive.
But this story isn't over. It doesn't just end in the past. These objects still have meaning for us today. Right now, in Wales, in the very community where the Caergwrle Bowl was found, they're creating this unique piece of playground art inspired by its design. It's just such a powerful reminder that this history isn't locked away in a museum. It's a living heritage that connects the deep past right to our present.
And that really brings us to a final thought. The people of the Bronze Age, they left their marks all over the landscape. You can still see their burial mounds and stone circles today. Their world isn't entirely gone. It's still here, all around us. Which kind of makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other clues, what other incredible stories are still waiting right now, just beneath our feet?